Thank you all, and welcome back to the Times Higher Education Emerging Economies Summit. Thank you also for everybody who's watching online as well. I'm delighted to be chairing this session myself and to have the honour of sharing the next hour with four outstanding leaders who will help us tackle the key question of what student employability now means in this digital age. And we wanted to address this topic hearing from university leaders, employers and providers of non-traditional education and skills training. So we're really privileged to have here on stage Dr. Arshad Ahmed, Vice-Chancellor of the Lahore Institute of Management Sciences, Dr. Walid Al-Zahir, Chief Research Officer of G42 Healthcare, based here in UAE, and Zahir Sroor, Director of Partnerships of Coursera, and joining us live online from Sri Lanka in Colombo, the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Colombo, Dr. Chandrika Vijayaratna. Now, to cover their full biographies and achievements would actually take the whole of the rest of the hour. So I recommend that you use the app or the website if you'd like to find out more of their details. And to ask us questions, please just either put your hand up or use the chat box online, and it will come up on a screen in front of me so we can see your questions. And I think that we would all agree that improving employability outcomes for graduates entering an increasingly volatile job market is essential as a role for any education provider. And particularly for universities, it's essential for your retention rates and student satisfaction. But what exactly comprises practical and critical thinking skills in this potentially, hopefully, post-COVID era that is, of course, increasingly focused on digitization? So to begin, and to get some context to help us understand what are the broad challenges facing universities in low and middle income countries, we'd first of all like to hand over to Professor Chandrika Vijayaratna, joining us live from Colombo to share her experience there.
Thank you very much. I hope I can be seen and heard. And I wish I could have joined you in person, but no doubt the digital transformation has enabled me to join you in both on stage as well as in spirit. So one of the problems that we are facing, no doubt, we cannot divorce ourselves from the ongoing pandemic, is the fact that on-site, in-person, on-campus presence of our students is very patchy. And still we are managing it and planning it while there is continuous online activity. So no doubt the research activities, particularly the field-based and community-based learning, have been dampened. The health services related students, such as the medical students, nursing, physiotherapy, etc., have again been affected because most of the learning material has been related to COVID-19 patients, and the others have been essentially managed at home. So while we have now grappled and actually been able to overcome a lot of the gaps that we have had with the digitization, we still have had those gaps, particularly in obtaining internships with the corporate world in person, which would be always much better, particularly for our rural-based students who come from very difficult backgrounds. So hostels have been, for example, taken over for COVID-19 intermediate care, and thereby we have had many gaps and delays in particularly the technology-based learning, laboratory-based learning, workshop-based learning, which have been deeply dented. Nevertheless, our teachers probably took on the flak more than the students, where they adapted, they were very agile, they adjusted, they retrained themselves more or less. And in fact, I would like to mention that those from the humanities and the social sciences, although they felt less positive and confident at the beginning, have been able to cope, and in terms of time lost in doing the assessments and taking the students further forward have been very well achieved. So no doubt we need to reskill, upskill for the job market in terms of employability, but we are still struggling. We have problems, particularly those with students with special needs, with disabilities, those who are studying in the vernacular in terms of language, and also the fine arts and the creative arts, which have had problems being on the digital mode, because it is cost, there is a cost component. No doubt we've been able to engage by diverting our funding to these aspects, but still most of our students are with smartphones and do lack the laptops, which I would have loved them to have had. So our alumni have helped us and have tried to bring in bridging programs, but it is still in the process of being fully covered and achieved.
Thank you very, very much indeed. Dr. Arshad, would you like to follow with the context in Pakistan? Is there any similarities to your experience there?
Thank you, Tim, and Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Pleasure to be here. I guess I'd offer perhaps a more institutional view in terms of those of us that are here. Like our students, we are also developing as institutions, and we love to come to conferences like the ones hosted by THE, because they offer an opportunity for us to really take stock as to what we're actually doing. And I think for those that find themselves in conferences like these and are developed or on the road to development and have great potential, the traditional role of institutions, I would say, needs to, let's say, be captured under at least three main challenges that we're facing. One of them, I would say, is to step up and to go beyond business. We have lots of things to deal with, we heard from our previous speaker, and those are as many opportunities as there are challenges. But I would say for developing countries like Pakistan, the real challenge for a university that is become known and wants to have a greater impact would be to participate in the nation building that is just so sorely needed in so many aspects, particularly if you think about them in terms of the grand challenges that face the country. And you can pick any one you like. There's no shortage of those challenges. We, for example, focus on things like water, which is a great resource that we have right from the Himalayas right down to the Arabian Sea. As we do with poverty issues or equity issues, and the list goes on. And so whether it is energy or sustainability, these are the kinds of big umbrellas under which the university can focus on in trying to amplify its impact. The second challenge I would mention is about scaling, because the numbers are just unbelievable. Pick any province, let alone the entire nation, where you have over 220 million people, with 2/3 of them at the age of 30 or less. So there's a potential youth dividend that is just beyond belief. And the impact of scaling up has to be done without sacrificing quality. And that's where the challenge comes, because traditionally when you have more and more universities, brick and mortar style, you build but they don't come. And by they, I mean not students, but faculty. So there's a critical shortage of faculty in the way in which we are defining faculty expertise, as we heard in the morning, where research must be inextricably linked with dissemination of that research through teaching and to the service that we provide to our communities. Finally, I would say the last stepping up and scaling up would be something along the lines of freshening up, because a lot of the institutions are using old models and ways of thinking that keep us, let's say, create even more challenges rather than local indigenous solutions that we need in order to be able to deal with the topic of today, for example, which is to get closer to what employers are thinking, something that isn't new, but certainly offers us insights about how we as young universities, as small universities, can be more agile and certainly work on curriculum to be able to address those kinds of challenges.
Thank you very much, Dr. Arshad, for that really helpful summary. And so, from a Coursera perspective, I mean, do you feel those challenges are being understood, potentially even met, and what alternatives are you able to provide that perhaps traditional universities have not been able to offer?
Thank you. Thank you for your question. Well, indeed, yes, these challenges that we've been hearing so far, they are all something that we've been hearing for the last a year and a half. I mean, we all know that the higher education sector or industry has drastically changed over the last year and we at Coursera, I mean, from our work with thousands of universities, currently exceeding 4,000 universities, we've seen some trends that we think they are here to stay. The first trend is that universities these days are growing the blended learning. And blended learning, it's here to stay, and they are now universities, not only in the emerging or developed countries, also in the emerging world, they are now expanding their online teaching and learning capacities. The second trend that we're seeing here is that universities are focusing more on employability. Everybody at universities, they realize that students are now facing more challenges to join the job market. And this is something that career services departments are becoming now under the spotlight. And this is where Coursera is helping a lot in enabling these career service departments with a lot of job-based and skill set programs. I can think of the third trend is around affordability. Again, universities here, and as Dr. Arshad mentioned, I mean, this is related to scalability. Now universities are looking to improve the affordability. They want to reduce the delivery cost of teaching, and they want to scale up. They want to reach, communities that they haven't reached before, and this is without even jeopardizing the quality of the learning and at least maintaining the quality of their learning. And the fourth trend that we're seeing very much visible is around faculty in terms of supporting faculty in professional development, especially when it comes to online teaching and learning. So these are the trends that we're seeing so far, which I believe they have embedded challenges. And this is where Coursera at the moment is really trying to work with the universities and figure out how to help them overcome these challenges.
Thank you very much. And now, Dr. Walid, anybody I recommend going to the website of G42. It's an incredible cutting-edge healthcare company that's made enormous contributions here in the Gulf to particularly the COVID pandemic. And how much would you say that your success is dependent on the pipeline of graduate talent coming from local universities? Does the kind of innovations that Zahir has just spoken of encourage you that it's going to be even easier to hire locally, or are you potentially even looking now through digital technology to hire people from all over the world or markets where you may not otherwise have looked?
Thank you very much, Tim. So it's a blend of both. We have to address the fact that COVID have changed the landscape and the map of recruitment and talent, but it did not change how countries and societies are formed. So youth is still a big proportion of our society. COVID have just made it very obvious that in order for you to move forward, you have to use the newer generation talents. I'll give an example of two of the big projects that Group 42 have embarked on in the past 1.5 years that would mainly driven by young talent. And I don't want to say that this is because of COVID. It was a company's vision, because the company is young and it moves with speed and agility that the young generation are well suited for. One of the, maybe the biggest project that we have embarked on in 2020 was the For Humanity trial. And the For Humanity trial, to start a international, very big scale of a phase 3 clinical trial in the region which was not done before. And you go from very small scale clinical trials into a clinical trial that is trying to recruit 45,000 people to bring an end to the pandemic. It was COVID times. Borders were closed with so many neighboring countries. There was the talent acquisition and the country and the company's vision was to be dependent on the local talents and especially the young talents. And we had a very good success story with For Humanity. Most of our recruiters were from the country and the neighboring countries. They did a great job in making the project a success, introducing one of the WHO approved vaccines. And if we did it the old-fashioned way, where we had to go and recruit from, international countries and look for people with experience, we wouldn't have gone, it would have delayed the process. But we actually went outside the box and we did efforts into counting on the local talent that is here, especially young people, graduates. Yes, there were challenges in these people lacking some of the experience, but here comes the thinking out of the box with developing, rapid and intensive courses to train them. The other success story, which is similar in 2021, would be the Emirati Genome project, which was launched during COVID. And it's one of the largest, most ambitious scientific and omics-based projects in the world. And the story continues of you can either wait until COVID subsides and then you go and attract talent from around the world, or you, again, think outside the box and attract fresh graduates to start the program from the beginning, so they become the torch that carries the program within 10 years. Are fresh graduates, but we look at this as actually a plus and not a minus. And on a country level, that led to even opening of, and I'm sure my colleagues would like to hear this coming from academia, that led to opening of even master's and PhD programs and bachelor, new programs that was not implemented before in the country just because of that program, for these fresh graduates to continue their career path in that ambitious project. So we are in Group 42, if I may say that we represent maybe the corporate or the private part of the talk. We really support the notion that the pandemic, the plus side of it, that it showed that the youth and the new generation is a key pillar in the success of any projects or any initiatives in the era beyond the pandemic or COVID-19.
That's fantastic. And how much influence or how much time do you or your fellow board members or even your peers in other similar companies sort of spend talking with education leaders? How much influence do you feel you may have over the type of skills and training that their students are experiencing?
So, as I said, if we take both tracks, for example, the For Humanity trial, that trial and its success have led to actually the launch of the first Emirati-based CRO, clinical research organization, that specializes in carrying on research projects and clinical trials. And yes, there are fewer talent that can support the company, but with that, we established an educational track to train people, fresh graduates, attract them from universities, take them on the first step of being in a CRO, being a clinical research coordinator, developing a one-year intensive program to take them to the next step, being a clinical research assistant. And in the region, and especially in UAE, this is a newly created career path. You wouldn't think that, a fresh graduate, they would go to hospitals if they come from a biological background, But because of the lack of a local company that wants to hire local fresh graduates to train them to be senior managers and directors in 10 years in that field of clinical research that wasn't there before. We see it as a new step that opens academia, job market, and attracts new talent and opens just a new era of career development for the youth that wasn't developed before. The same happens for Emirati Genome project. At Group 42, we have the Omics Center of Excellence, which is the largest omics center in the region and the Middle East. And army of people to actually open the Omics Center and make it fully operational for the launch of the project. And we are really proud to say that 30 to 40% of our manpower that is running that national initiative on that grandiose scale are fresh graduates that we have hired last year, went into training them for 3 to 6 months prior to the launch of the program on the state-of-art sequencing technologies and cutting-edge projects that we have within the Omics Center, that they are now the people who are actually managing that project in the Omics Center. What is the academia role here? Because these people are fresh graduates and because we have a 10 to 20 years vision of this program to reshape the healthcare, we forged alliances with universities. United Arab Emirates universities, for example, since the inception of the ID program, we talked with them about creating 3 master's program and 1 PhD program on the focus that EGP wants the next 10 years academia to focus on, which is genetic counseling. There is a master's of genomics, and there is the new era, which is data driven, which is the master's of bioinformatics. These 3 tracks were not there before in the United Arab Emirates. Actually, they're going to be launched next year to accept fresh graduates to pursue their career and to complement the Emirati Genome project. So it's a project that even goes beyond the 10 or 20 years that it's supposed to have. And
Sri Lanka, and if someone came to you and said, we have a 10 to 20 year vision to create a new economy in Sri Lanka, I mean, how easy would it be for your university to be able to support that, or does it depend a bit more on the external innovation ecosystem that you exist within? Can you respond first from a Sri Lankan context, and then we'll go to
I should think that we could play a very positive role, because that's exactly what we would want for our students. And for example, we always had a void of an engineering faculty, and we have gone through the process, and we are planning to take in our first intake from 2022-23. And we are in the process of speaking not only with the industry, but also with Treasury to work out a new model of trying to have a link where we develop a conduit with the industry to have very highly skilled graduates. So no doubt some of the study areas would help us in as much as agriculture, as one of the previous speakers said. I mean, with the looming food crisis that we are expecting by next year, we are encouraging even the small and medium enterprise concept of getting into the areas of rural farming through experiential learning, as well as research and innovation, such as tissue culture and agro-tourism and agroforestry, so that we are encouraging more environmental consciousness climate change, which are probably newer levels of emphasis. So no doubt, our university and most of the other state universities do play a role and would be very happy to join with the industry and the corporate sector with a view to regaining our economies, which are severely dented, particularly in terms of tourism and also even the importation of fertilizer, which has been a problem due to economic problems that the country is facing right now. Inasmuch as we are exploring the possibility of having more graduate nurses, for example, to match the needs of the fast aging populations, not only in Sri Lanka, but in the region and in the world, where graduate nursing and home-based care can be encouraged, so that we would like to even cross geographical boundaries, not only for remote and virtual employment, but also even to be sent out as a workforce to countries that are in requirement of such human capital.
Thank you. And Dr. Rashad, how much time are you spending talking with the people who want to employ your graduates? Enough? Too much?
Enough.
Enough.
During the break, I had the opportunity to chat with a young man from Ashoka University, and he was talking about the entrepreneurship center that he's leading. It made me think that, a while ago, this was not even on the curriculum radar in most universities. But if you go to a developing country like Pakistan, you're going to find that entrepreneurship is now seen as the solution to the employment prospects of young people, and I mentioned already how many young people are in the pipeline. But it sort of led me to think about a theory of change that we need in order to strengthen those bridges with employers who have, in my mind at least, I think very simplistically about this, as to what it is that they're looking for from graduates that come in, other than, of course, welcoming them to whatever organization that they lead. And I sort of bring it down to something as basic as when they hire a graduate, and it could be from any of our universities, they just want that person to get things done. So they give them an assignment, say, do this or do that. They don't want to spend a lot of time telling the person the parameters of what the problem is, or for that matter, what the solution is. And so one has to figure that out. But I'm not sure that the curriculum that we offer really prepares them for those kinds of assignments. So if you think about this particular notion of knowledge, which I would sort of disagree with, this kind of general understanding that, hey, if you want knowledge, it's right here. Well, that's really quite a superficial answer in my mind, because I think there's more misinformation here than the knowledge that I think we're all talking about. So if you'd like to have students to think for themselves and to take a stand or to convince other people, they must get involved in content, which still has to be a very important part of the curriculum. So no matter how you slice that, you put that aside and say, we're not going to have this intellectual development, which takes time, where one goes through, if you look at the Perry schema of intellectual development, goes through stages. And this is a theory that we have seen tested over many decades, where students develop, and that takes time to get that deep learning and understanding of looking at context and relative problem solutions, etc. So when they walk into this world of work, I'm not sure our curriculum is preparing them to, first of all, deal with people, think about people in terms of just collaborating with them, interacting with them, communicating with them, but also convincing them. So when you're given a task and you're asked, do something, you're going to come up with maybe a McKinsey type of solution, right? Where you've been groomed in your business school or in your MBA or what have you, in other programs, where you come up with the strategy and you think it's bulletproof and you've got it all figured out. But we know that consultants have limits because it's the decision maker who's going to decide whether that solution fits in the context in which the problem was presented in the first place. So this means that for those students, giving feedback, getting feedback, understanding the context in which the solution is presented, where you have so many choices, you have to make good choices, and our curriculum must prepare them for that. And if they do succeed, and here's the good news, remember that that young woman or man who gets the task and succeeds is going to be given a more difficult task. And that more difficult task means that they must then dig deep into a whole set of skills which the one disciplinary focus may not have prepared them for, which suggests to me that universities have to break silos in the sort of tribally organized disciplinary pockets. This is the structure that is imposed in which curricula resides, to break those walls, to break those boundaries, so we really think about interdisciplinarity as a way of thinking and learning, so that young person can, be multi-skilled, to be able to embrace those kinds of challenges that they face. And so the last point I'll make is the implication for the institution is not to have a sort of a set time frame for learning, that you start here and you've finished. Well, actually, we know it's never finished. It's a journey that will continue for life. And so our program should be accordingly set up for life. So when a student enters your university, you've got them for the rest of their lives. And that is a way of thinking, I think, that can allow them to go in and out, back and forth into industry with employers, reskill, come back to their institutions or sister institutions, get the credentialing that they require, but never leave the universe of higher education.
Thank you. And Zaher, I mean, from a Coursera perspective, I mean, you've talked about the learning data that you have from your users, but how much of your strategy and how much of your time is spent talking to employers and understanding the skill sets that they most desire that you can then put through into the models that you offer?
Yes, that's a very good question, Tim. Coursera is a data-driven company. I mean, everybody knows that Coursera is a learning platform, but what's really enriching this platform is the data that we get from. I just want to share a story here, or a study we've done a couple of months ago about. We took example of students studying, for example, different domains like biological sciences, and I give an example here of those students who want to become clinical research analysts or microbiologists or biostatistician. We found that the skills that these students are studying at their universities are different or lack a number of skill sets than those who are professionals in the field. So we compare somebody who is a microbiologist in the field to that student who's studying to be a microbiologist. And we found out that there are many gaps, which confirms what you're saying about the curriculum has to be updated. It has to be, and it's not always the core courses. It's not always the knowledge. It's about the multidisciplinary skills, those related to problem solving, those related to critical thinking, leadership, and this is where we are shedding the light to universities and telling them this is where we think from the data that we have, from the 87 million learners that we have, that you need to help your students with. Now, back to your question, Tim, around the skill sets. Again, Coursera works with thousands of leading employers, and we hear from them, and we hear also from reports everywhere, that companies and employers are not really satisfied with the outcomes of the student, with the graduates. They think that students are not adequately prepared to join the workforce. And we've seen that from companies like Google, IBM, Netflix, Apple, they're talking about this, this content, saying that there's a mismatch here between the skills that graduates have and the skills that needed for the new roles. And this is why they are now shifting into different hiring practices. They are now looking at skills-first hiring instead of show me which university you're coming from. Of course, the degree of the university is still something important, but it's not anymore enough. And this is where at Coursera we're trying hard. We're figuring out how to support with this transition of the students from the university to the workforce. We introduced something called skill sets, and simply skill set is a job-based learning program. Like if I'm a student and I'm really strong in coding and I want to be like a web developer or I want to be a programmer, what are the skill sets that I need to have for me to be able to deliver or to be a good candidate for this role that I see in the market? And basically what we do, so we look at this, we look at the different courses, different coming from university partners, coming from the industry, and we set targets for these proficiency levels for that role. But the question comes again, where these targets are coming from. Basically, they are coming from those 87 million learners so far on the platform and thousands of employers who their employees are also training and getting trained on the same role, like a web developer or a programmer or a data analyst. So this gives a lot of insight to universities, especially for career service departments, saying, okay, this is what your students need to have for them to secure this role, which is becoming very difficult these days. Lots of competition, not only from the local environment, from a global perspective. So that's how we are looking at skill sets at the moment. So far, we have introduced almost over 300 skill sets in the fields of software engineering, in the fields of cybersecurity, marketing, finance, leadership. And we believe that this is something that's going to be really revolutionary in terms of helping universities to bridge this gap between what they are producing and what the market is.
Thank you. Thank you. I will invite you, please, to give your own questions in a minute, because I want to have the liberty of asking one more question myself to Dr. Walid. So think about a good question. But Dr. Walid, I think one of the lags perhaps for innovation in all sectors is the tendency that companies have to hire in their own image. We want to hire people who may have had a similar trajectory to ourselves because we feel we understand that they've been through what we went through and we're great, so they will be great as well. And I wondered, in terms of your company and the people who are doing the recruitment, do they recognize the skill sets and the kinds of things that are being developed by the online education providers as being kind of equally valid to a traditional course or degree from a well-established medical school? What's the kind of perspective that you guys have?
So thank you very much. Actually, we do a mix of both, and again, we have to think of this as the new era of even talent acquisition and HR. At Group 42, yes, certificates and education from renowned universities and similar, accredited education tracks, which in the past were the only measure of how would you hire a person, are taken in consideration. But we also value the newer, out of the box talents and skills. Not everyone necessarily has to have a degree from Oxford to have the same skill and talent as a graduate from Oxford. People have an innate, if you give them the right atmosphere and the right career path, it's not about going only through. I'm not saying it's not necessary, it's not important to go maybe for certain people or some of the youth to pursue the old-fashioned way of education, sorry for calling it all the old-fashioned, but there is a new way. It's like the book smart and the street smart. The street smart wasn't a term that was there, 20, 30 years back. Now, most of the people in the innovation, most of the people that are entrepreneurs, most of the people who are running multi-billion-dollar company are actually street smarts. They are not necessarily Oxford or Harvard graduates. And in Group 42 and in our ecosystem, we look at both book smart and street smart as potential candidates for employment, because you need both. You need people who had the experience. You need people who have been there and done that, maybe to train the newer generation, the new employments who maybe do not have a career history or an employment history, but they do have the talent to be great in their own way, and not necessarily through acquiring many certificates and a long title at the end. So I hope everyone is doing the same, but for us at Group 42, we actually sometimes even prefer the street smarts to book smarts.
Excellent. Please, if anybody has any questions for our esteemed panel, we've got about 15 minutes left on the clock, so would anybody like to put their hand up, or have you got any questions online that have come through? Can we have a microphone? Thank you. Have a microphone too. And if you don't mind saying which institution you represent and your name as well. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Gada Ahmed from the University of Bahrain. First of all, I would like to thank you all for this interesting panel. We enjoyed really the discussion. I just would like to share our experience at the university, because I liked very much the comment stated by Dr. Arshad when he said that when we have our students, we have to think that we are having them for life. It's not just their journey during the university. So at the University of Bahrain, we launched, it's 1 year ago, we launched the micro-credential program for our students, where we focused on the top skills that are mentioned in the World Economic Forum. And we started in collaboration with some of the firms from the private sector to introduce those skills through different courses. And at the end of this program, we issued digital badges for our students, which they could share through their LinkedIn and the social media. Now, the interesting thing is that we started this program with our foundation year students, so we did not have to wait until, let's say, the recent years or let's say the advanced years, like fourth year or third year students. But we believe that we need to equip our students with the employability skills that they need and the long life learning skills right from the beginning. And that was a pilot like 1 year ago. Now we are improving the program so that it has more skills and more accreditation, so that we are now opening it up for all the university students. So yeah, thank you for this, and I wanted to share this with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've had a question online that's just come through from Kathleen Guillaume, which is to the panel. And she asks, how much influence should the job market have on how universities educate? She says, employers may not know more than what we do about what society will be like in 5 or 10 years. Does anyone have a response to that?
Sure.
Arshad?
Thank you, and thanks for the question. We hear a lot about mastery of content, skills. We don't hear as much about habits and about values. And I think employers are at the same page as we are about how important these are, because they stick. So let me give you a very practical example. Last night, I had the chance to spent some time with some of our alumni here in Dubai. We have some 600 alumni in the UAE, very fortunate to have this kind of a group. And so a whole bunch of them gathered. And you know what we talked about is, other than some exciting things that they wanted to do with the university, specifically they were reflecting on those habits that they learned in their experience, their 4-year undergraduate experience, or most of them did MBAs and they're doing very well here. And they talked about the time when a case was due and the gentleman remembered his professor who would not accept that assignment, which he worked so hard on for over a week with an entire group, but he was 1 minute late. And this professor was really punctual about timing and wanted to teach the person a lesson and said, sorry, you're going to get a big fat 0. And the fellow just couldn't believe it. He said, look, I'm 1 minute late. How can you do this to me? And he said, well, rules are rules. If you don't know about time management today, imagine what's going to happen to you when you're out there and someone's life's on stake. And he said, I never forgot that lesson. And since then, I'm even more time conscious than my German colleagues at the place that he works in. So these are habits, and these are habits that we can inculcate in our programming, in the ethos that is the university system, where young people are developing, and a lot of that development is expected from that milieu the university provides. And it's a social experiment, really, where that development can be, I would call it molded as much as regarded as to what are the things that are really going to matter over time. Things like integrity, telling the truth, things like being punctual, yes, being respectful, but most of all, I think one of the values that these people talked to me about yesterday was especially in today's context, about giving back. So they received a gift from the university, and it was their time to give back, not only to their friends, because they're very busy people, but to causes that I think are bigger than themselves. And so this is a kind of value-based education that I think stays much longer than any model you've learned or any Nobel Prize-winning insight that you grapple with. You'll appreciate that for sure, but you're probably going to have those values stay alive. So I see our role to be far more than just giving skills or just giving, well, those are important, and this is not to discount anything my colleagues have said, but just to say that the business we're in is a sort of a last refuge where we can make a profound impact on how young people are going to then give back to society and to give back to those who were very generous to them.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a reflection on the question from Kathleen? In respect to the jobs market, your employers not necessarily knowing that far in advance what jobs will be available?
Yeah, I think everybody agrees that the world of work is changing, and more roles require more, perhaps, digital skills. But nobody knows what type of these digital skills will be required in 10 years' time. This is evolving. And I think this connection between the industry and the higher education industry, like companies and higher ed, is very important to keep feeding each other in terms of what's happening in the market, and preparing students preparing students to be really employable at the end. Now, if I'm a student, if I'm a student today, I just joined the university. If the university did not really upgrade and update the curriculum in 2 years' time or 3 years' time, then all what I've learned the very first year will be obsolete at the time I graduate. So this harmony, this connection, this ecosystem between higher education and corporations is very much needed. Not only about digital skills. I mean, as Dr. Arshad mentioned, we are very much in need of the soft skills, the human skills that graduates need at the end of the day. So that's how it should be, I believe, because we are really entering an era where we know that things are changing, but we don't really know how fast it is going to change and what will be the shape of these skills and the shape of this will be in the next 5 to 10 years.
If I may add, I think it's very clear, which have been shown in the past 20 years, that the new era is going into, digital data and AI. And I'm not saying that these are standalone, these are skills and maybe educational tracks that are complementary to whatever is existing. It doesn't eliminate whatever is, it just gives it another flavor. Group 42 being an AI and data-driven company, there is nothing called a data academic track, but there is something called taking whatever is there, and this is where I think all the universities are working on, and maybe all the courses at Coursera, taking whatever is there and just transferring it into something that suits the era that we are living in, which is a digital data-driven era. Data is the new oil, as they are saying, and you take a traditional educational path, for example, which is biology. Now, biology is being driven by data and data analysis and big data. So you're not actually reinventing the wheel, more of just reshaping it in a way that suits, the newer, the data-driven age that we are living. So I guess this is the transformation that all academia and even companies are undergoing, which is shifting from traditional to data-driven, either operations or even hiring or talent acquisition or academia. All goes under the data transformation.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions for our panel? We've got a gentleman, I think, put his hand up first. Should we have a microphone? And I feel, out of respect of Dr. Arshad's professor, we're going to try and keep to time management. So if you could make your question as succinct as possible, please.
Yeah, my question is to Mr. Zahir. You said that your recent survey, the Coursera survey, has revealed that employers are not happy with the skills our graduates are graduating with. Has the survey revealed any details on the skills gap between what employers are requiring and students are graduating with in terms of skills?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Just to be clear about this, it is not a survey, it is something that we hear from companies that we work with. Those are leaders in their fields, like in telecommunication, financial services, oil and gas, energy, etc. So basically, the way that we think of ourselves at Coursera is this learning ecosystem that we have at one side those millions of learners. We have on the other side the content partners that provide the content. These are university partners and industry partners. And we also have on the third side the institutions. And these institutions are companies, they are government agencies, and they are also universities. So basically, what we're hearing from them becomes a data for us to input and bring it back to our university partners, telling them that that's what we're hearing from the industry, and how can you bring something that's much needed for students. Now, there are a lot of reports it's been published over the last few years about this gap between skills that students have and skills that the market needs. We have not, as Coursera, we have not published something like this so far. The information that we reveal is based on our experience with our learners. So basically, the 87 million learners so far as this moment, it tells us that there is a gap. And the gap coming out from these different domains in terms of whether it is biology, whether it's mathematics, whether it's computer science. These are the learners at Coursera. They provide us the insight of these type of gaps. For example, in terms of biology, we found out that students who are studying biology in the university, they are not good in statistical programming. They're not good in programming in general. And whereas the professionals in this field, they have to have these type of skills. So these type of insights that we gathered so far, and we've crunched the data, is our main source of information when we talk about this the skills gap.
Thank you. We had one more question from a gentleman just over there. And again, if you don't mind saying where you're from.
Oh, very good morning. I am Tuhin from India. I'm actually a student from Amity Business School. First of all, thank you so much for the lovely insights that you shared with us. Addressing the topic of discussion, employability in the digital age, my question is for the e-learning experts. So education's become really accessible. We all can learn whatever we like, whatever our field of interest is, but what is really being done to prevent any further dilution than there already is? There are a plethora of platforms available for us to learn, and anybody can pretty much log in, create a membership, pay for it, and start learning a course. But this also weakens credentials that you earn at the end of the course, because when the pandemic first started, people were going in for the courses earning 30, 40 certificates in a span of 8 to 10 months, and there have been a lot of insights and studies saying that yes, there is a dilution which is happening. So how are these e-learning platforms really combating that? What are the measures being taken to keep the strength of these e-learning platforms and maintain an edge?
Yeah, thank you for your question. I assume that this question is for me here. So in less than a minute, I can say that we look at it in a different way, in fact. I mean, it's absolutely up to the university how to integrate the content from, let's say, from Coursera to the curriculum. And we've seen this being done in different ways. We've seen this integration happen at the course level, where professors, each in his or her own subject matter expertise, they bring in whatever is suited to the course that they are offering, and enriching this with the labs that Coursera offers, with the current updated content, and it's helping them a lot to save time as well in creating something or recreating something from scratch. We've also seen something at the department level or a program level, where coming as to strengthen and supplement what the program has, especially in areas of emerging technologies and multidisciplinary skills. So we think of it as not really as a dilution. We think of it like we are enriching. I mean, that's what we hear from universities, in fact. I mean, universities are looking at us as to enrich their learning experience and their teaching experience to the students. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your questions. And in order not to disgrace my own alma mater, I have had the habit of time management, and so I'm afraid that is the time where we have to end this session. But please join me in, again, thanking in Colombo Dr. Chandrika, and here on stage Arshad, Zahir, and Dr. Walid for joining us and sharing their views. And of course, we are here, so you can please also continue to talk with them in the lunch break. But for right now, please join me in giving immense thanks to their contribution.
Thank you.